Hello, friends. So, Bible study. This is the NIV, Romans, chapter 12. We're going to go through verses 1 through 21, which is really all of chapter 12. Remember, this is a letter from Paul to other people of faith while he's in Rome, where he had to flee to so he wasn't murdered in Jerusalem for becoming a Christian, really. At this point in history, the Pharisees and the Sadducees are saying that Christianity is a sect of Judaism, because that's how it originally started, and it was just called the Way. So that's where we are in history, about 50 AD or so. That is the estimation from biblical scholars. I am not a biblical scholar. I'm just reading from the Bible every day. Okay. This parable is called the living sacrifice, or living sacrifices, I should say. Chapter 12. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in the view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world. This still applies. But be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Okay? Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Remember that when you're going through life and it seems like you have no idea what's going on here. What you can comprehend in this world is a tiny fragment of what God can comprehend. Because he knows what's going to go on absolutely everywhere, on every planet, known and unknown, in every single microsecond of the universe. You don't have the capacity for your brain, because the human brain just isn't designed to handle that kind of processing power. Think of it as like your brain is about the equivalent of a power of a 1990s cell phone, and God is every cloud storage in existence in the world altogether. What you can understand and what he can put out into the world are far, far different. And it is us who doesn't have the right capacity. Okay. For by the grace given me, I say to everyone, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, being humble. And remembering that whatever skill set you have, there are other people on this earth that have that skill set. You're not the only one he decided he could teach that thing to. You're the only one who has your combination of gifts. Because we're each our own divine expression. But you're not the only one you have with each one of the individual skill sets that you have. But rather think of yourself with sober judgment, in accordance with the measure of faith God has given you. So no matter how awesome you think everything is, you're only as awesome as your faith in God is, because he's in charge of everything. So if you're not in alignment with him, you really don't have all that much going for you. Essentially is what that is. Just as each of us has one body with many members, i.e. you have arms, right? And you have different parts of your arms. It's not just one unit of arm. Yeah, this is one unit of arm, but you have your individual digits, you have your fingernails, you have your each individual joint, and then you get into the rest of what makes up your hand. Just think of it in that way. That's what he means by many members. And these members do not have all the same function. Your elbow doesn't do the same thing as your nose, right? Those are two very drastically different functions. So in Christ, we who are many form one body. Like we all got to come together so we can rise together. And each member belongs to all the others. This idea that what you do doesn't affect anybody else around you. The only way that works is if you have absolutely no community. You must be willing to live completely without any other humans. And then what you do affects no one else. If you live in a neighborhood, if you live in an apartment, if you can try to argue, but no. If you've lived in an apartment, you can keep your home as tidy as you want. And if your neighbor next door is a slob, you will get roaches. And there won't be anything you can do about that, because it's not you, it's them. And just like that is an example of other people bring problems to your life, and you have to decide how you're going to deal with it. I mean, I myself, had multiple things going on in my house yesterday. So in Christ, we who are many form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. Whatever we do, we affect everything about the other person, right? That's very important to remember. We are pack animals. We don't do well mentally on our own. A human living in isolation long enough will go crazy. Just like those elephants that you hear about at zoos, who, when they don't have anybody else, the other elephants, they just start rocking back and forth because they don't have anybody to communicate with. It's the same thing for us. That's why solitary confinement in prison is supposed to be the, biggest punishment that you're getting unless you're sentenced to execution. Because it's supposed to be the only thing that's worse than just being dead is to be alone. Like living the rest of your life alone or being dead. And most people think they can do that until they try. And then it doesn't work. Now, some of us, like myself, I am a social creature as much as I am an introvert. But when I go and take those tests, it's sort of like, if this is extrovert and that's introvert, it's like introvert. It's like literally 2 points in this way or 5 points in this way. And on some days, it's 1 or 2 points on that side. Instead, if I take that test, if I'm feeling more social while I take that test, because what I am is actually a social introvert. I have a bigger problem getting my mouth to shut the heck up than I do keeping myself from talking. So I work from home. I don't get paid to be a minister. I get paid to work in the design end of construction as a technology expert. So my job is to help people at work. And then my hobby is to be a minister and then help people at home. So absolutely, I know I can't exist without other people. It's a matter of what people and how much interaction do you need. And it might be different for each person. But you're still part of a pack. That's our nature. It's kind of sort of the nature of mammals. It's one of the traits of mammals. Now, some mammals, like the big cats, prides and such, and some of those big cats, they're a little bit more solitary, but they still come together, at least during mating season, when they're not completely isolated. We have different gifts according to the grace given us. If a man's gift is prophesying, let him use it in proportion to his faith. Now, prophesying, we're going to take a second and talk about that. What is prophesying? In order to become a prophet, you need to have the ability to see the future. Wait, I thought that was a psychic. The difference between a psychic and a prophet is a psychic only turns their attention to God. a prophet only turns their attention to God. A psychic doesn't necessarily know who's giving them the information. And that's the problem. A prophet is a prophet of the Lord. Or they could be a prophet of, whatever demon they're choosing to serve. But if it's a prophet of the Lord, then everything they're told will happen, happens. Not necessarily in the way they think it will. I can confirm that. But it unfolds. And you're pre-told for a reason. So you don't freak out in what's going on. And if you're experiencing deja vu, then you at least have the burgeoning beginnings of being a prophet of the Lord. It's a choice. There are points in the Old Testament in which there were thousands of prophets of the Lord at a time. And even then, even in the worst of times with unbelievers, he still had 7,000 in all of Israel that were still his, and at least a percentage of those were prophets of the Lord. It's only when sin is at its maximum does it be where we only have one. Because even if you only have one, they're not all over. Right? There were multiple altars to the Lord, even in the Old Testament. It wasn't just Moses. Moses for the Jews. Other people for other countries. When those countries started doing more demon worship, that guy went from being a prophet to a psychic, and then he was killed. Once you decide to be a prophet, he will not take you cheating on him well. Because you're supposed to be dedicated to him, and you're supposed to be doing anything you need to your environment to keep yourself in alignment with him. You have less excuses for disobeying the rules, because he talks to you directly then, and that is an honor. So there's a conduct in which one must have. It is, if it is serving, let him serve. If it is teaching, let him teach. If it is encouraging, let him encourage. If it is contributing to the needs of others, let him give generously. If it is leadership, let him govern diligently. If it is showing mercy, let him do it cheerfully. Now, in my opinion, if one is a prophet of the Lord, you're supposed to be doing all of those things, and you're supposed to be doing them every single day. When you are a leader, you are a servant leader, because that's what following in the way of the Christ is. That's why he was all those things, because he was first a prophet of the Lord. He may have been born to be the Messiah, and I'm sorry, there's another parable here. We're only in verse 9, I know, because it's Johnny. He may have been born to be the Messiah, but what really made him the Messiah is his conscious choice. So that meant first he had to be trained to be a prophet. Now, I'm sure that was much easier for him, because as someone like me, I like to describe it as I was born plugged in, meaning I could never deny the existence of God, because I felt the connection to the one source from birth. And by default, I've always been, when I'm unsure of something, going, what am I doing? And then waiting for the thought to pop in my head of what to do. And it's almost always never wrong. It's only when I'm panicked and I'm trying to do what I think is best that I get stuff messed up. I try not to do that anymore. That's part of being dedicated. Because what you're doing here when you're in the servant leadership is you're remembering that the entire test is my will to thy will. Which means regardless of my 3D environment, I'm not supposed to freak out. I'm supposed to be the calm in the storm. Because that's what faith is. It's trusting that in this 3D moment, he is asking you to respond with your highest and best self, the most healed you can be, and be kind to other people when life is rough, for the goodness of it. And that is a big challenge, I can tell you. It's not easy, because I still have temper tantrums. Other people would say they lose their temper, but I need to humble myself more, so I call them temper tantrums. You're in constant state of humbling yourself so that you do not force your will on the world, but you're open and listening to whatever he just tells you to say to whoever is in front of them. Or do, if there's some kind of physical emergency, or you're a hands-on healer like that. No, I'm not going to tell him I'm not a hands-on healer, or tell you I'm not, because last time I did that, he brought me somebody I needed to be a hands-on healer for, and I don't want people to, they don't need to do that. It's not my regular day job. When I'm talking about that, I'm talking about doctors, nurses, a massage therapist, that kind of thing. This parable is called Love, and it's verse 9. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Now, I would caution about hating. I know he said that. Hate is particularly strong, and you don't want to enhance the negative energies in the world. That's not part of anchoring the light. You're supposed to transmute the negative energies in the world into the positive. But yes, do speak out against injustice. Just do it in a way that honors everybody without disgracing yourself by name calling. That's also a challenge for me. Be devoted to one another in brotherly love. Honor one another above yourselves, servant leadership. Never be lacking in zeal, and keep your spiritual fever, serving the Lord. It's hard to get, I talk about God all the time. Everybody around me that's in my personal life just has to accept that I'm going to view the world from that lens, because they're not going to get me to alter that. My logic and reasoning is on point. That is not the problem. He has been working with me on the gentleness of my heart and the calming when I get, how to relieve the stress before I speak, so my words are more gentle. So, this is the temper. If you're a geek like me, in the Marvel series, I used to test to the Incredible Hulk, and now I test to Spider-Man. That's the difference. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you, and bless those bless and do not curse. That is a harder part for me, because I will be happy to when I'm in my frustration moment, especially in my younger self who had less patience and less maturity, would be happy to tell you all the reasons that you were going to go to hell for the behavior that you're doing. Instead, it better to ask you, what is your goal? And then tell you how this behavior is not consistent with the goal that you are stating. And then maybe giving you a way to balance that on the other side. Because I understand better that everybody has these same challenges in their life, and they only know what they're taught. So teach them what you know, and maybe it'll work for them, or maybe it'll get them to think about what they need instead. And they find the method that works for them. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Do not repay anyone's evil. They left out an S here. Anyone's evil for evil. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everybody. Now, that's a challenge. That's a decided thought. What he's talking about here is you're making a conscious thought to respond to their toxicity with love, because that's what compassion is. It is the most basic form of love. That's really what grace is. It's part of compassion. If you're showing compassion, you are being graceful. It's kind of like the definition of grace. Remember, it's the immaculate heart that made Mary birth Jesus, not her conceit. because she was signing herself up for an entire life of people shunning her for the sin they thought she committed. Because there was going to be no way she could prove this baby was the Christ until her son was dying on the cross and then reborn. And that means she had to be willing to birth him young and then watch him die in her lifetime. And if you're a parent, you tell me how easy that is. And then you think again about how hard your life is. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And that's going to depend on you and not necessarily them. Because if you're in the wrong room and you can't have peace with these people because they are not a peaceful people, then you need to find a way to remove yourself. And that means you needing to be willing enough, to be humble enough to go, you can have it all. I don't need any of this because it's not the right space for me. And I don't need to worry about what I won't have when leaving here, because Creator will provide if I can live without a spirit of fear. Because fear is, if it's deep-rooted fear, okay, I'm gonna be very clear. If it's deep-rooted, total panic, fear, like it comes over your whole body and overwashes you, that can be a warning you're about to do the wrong thing. Pay attention to that fear. If it's fear that came to you after your brain started spinning, when your heart said yes, but your brain said, wait! Okay, that's a different thing. And you need to examine where that fear is coming from. It's likely a trauma. It doesn't mean you should stop and pause, because I'm not telling you not to trust your own self. But you have to remember that we're all traumatized by something, and we're all healing from something, and almost no one is ever done healing. Once you're in a perfect state, and you have nothing else left to do here, then you die. And in teaching, you learn some more. In healing, you heal some more. You get as you give. It's not anything. Like, I am very analytical. When I am learning from the people around me now is how to be more compassionate, how to be more gentle, how to stop and think about the reaction of the person that I'm with, because these are people who do that by default. And using analyticals to calm the brain is harder for them. Now, I've got some other people who, like me, are also analytical, so they're learning, like I am, to be more compassionate with those people. And that's the right room. I'm in the right room. I don't have any doubt about that. I know that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, even right in this moment. I have no doubts. And I cannot tell you how wonderful that is and how much stress that drops. And when you drop that stress, you will actually drop weight, because stress raises cortisol, and cortisol makes you hold on to weight. So your spinny brain, if you refuse to let go of it, is a detriment to yourself and not an asset anymore. And you can do what you need to do as long as you can be functional in the rest of life to get that brain to calm, because it's not going to be the same thing. Do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge, and I will repay, says the Lord. On the contrary, if your enemy is hungry, feed them. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals onto his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. We pray for our enemies to be better people, because if they are better people, the world is a better place. We don't have to stay around them. We have permission to go find our room, because what he wants is everybody to be the happiest that they can be. Whether or not you're happy is in your own headspace, and it's your own perception, and it's whether or not you're willing to do the work it takes to be the best version of you that you can be, and you're willing to let go of the idea of, I'm going to use a business term here, sunk cost. So if you want to argue with me that this is all spirit and it doesn't work in the real world, I'm sorry, there's a business term. Sunk cost. Sunk cost is the fallacy that you can't let go of this thing that isn't working because you haven't earned back your money from it yet. You will never earn back your money from it. If you have a business, you have to continue to invest in your business for it to continue to grow. There's never a point in which you stop putting in the work and the money just rolls in. You have to have investments and play in the stock market. And I'm going to be honest with you. I can play the stock market. I've got an MBA. I know how to read that stuff. I do dabble in the stocks, but only what I can afford to lose. Just like I don't overspend money on lottery tickets either. Yeah, you got to play if you want to win. But it's a gamble. It's high stakes gambling. It is also how you develop long-term wealth to hand down to generations. That doesn't come out of nowhere. That comes out of somebody being a generational curse breaker and hustling their life with the intention of passing it down. If you want to be lazy in life, then you got to be happy with whatever you can get with what that is. If you can't earn it, then you can't reap it. You can only reap what you sow. But the good news is only you get to decide what makes you happy. So your life only has to have as much in it as you need. And you can decide how important any one object in your house is. And I know this because I had 4 different things, minor objects to me, that broke yesterday, all in one day. Only one of them by my use. My reaction to that was, that wasn't a very expensive item. When I can afford to replace it, I will. It's not really that big of a deal. One of those, well, 2 of those were functional. Like functional items that I use. Others of them were for play. And not even for me. For play for children and children who broke them. They weren't expensive. They're not my children. It's okay. It means you guys played with it so much because they weren't brand new objects. It means you played with it so much that you broke it. Okay? It was a learner object. I'll get you another one. It might take a couple of weeks, but I'll let you know when it's back because I keep acquiring things for them to play with. Why? Because I have more. My nieces and nephews are, even with the age, and I might look to you, are grown. And they have children. My nieces and nephews are the same age as these people I'm hanging out with in my house, because my family is far away. Because I don't have any children, sometimes I get this kind of like where they don't, I don't want to have to clean up the mess after their children. I appreciate that they do. But also I've cleaned up every icky thing that comes out of a human before in my life because I have nieces and nephews that are the same age of these adults. So I've been through this before and I've learned the lesson that you either give children things they can play with or they will play with the things you don't want them to play with because they need to be entertained and they need to be educated. So I buy the things that are both fun and educational. And it's been duly noted that I seem to already have things around to entertain children at a moment's notice. Because I have had to entertain children at a moment's notice almost my entire life because I don't have any children. And I find children delightful because I'm in touch with my subconscious mind. And I'm estimated that like most people, your subconscious mind is like from 3 to 7 years old at max. And I think mine's about 6. That's what it feels, because I remember what it's like to be 6. And I have managed to hold on through my love of science to my childlike wonder of the world. And that is what children respond to. Because I still like comic books. And video games aren't for me. But I understand that they are for them. So cool. You go, I'm not going to play this, but it's an older video game system, but hey, it's something. And I will custom curate the things that they're going to like. And I will sit there and pay attention to them when they'll hear. And that's what they're seeking. And all that is life experience. And it's life experience anybody else can have and anybody else can teach. Everyone becomes a teacher eventually. That's what it is to be filled with zeal. This is a long one because I have time, I know. That's a proper homily. I encourage you to go through life holding on to your childlike wonder and looking for the laugh. And remembering that as you give to others, Creator will give to you. And if you need a further incentive, killing them with kindness is the phrase. Because the nicer you are to them and the more raggedy that they are to you, the worse they look and the better you do. Now that shouldn't be your reason. But if you need a reason to start until you figure out that it feels really good to help other people, well, then you have your incentive. Because, hey, everybody has been wounded some way and to some length. And no one has the right to judge you for where you're at. Eventually, it will become second nature, but you got to have a place to start. And this is the place that I used to start. So you're not going to get any judgment out of me. Have a blessed day, my friends. May the love and light of Jesus fill your world with joy.